right, YouTube started up, Instagram started up. This is it. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas. If I don't see you guys again, if all of this cuts off in 30 seconds, I tried. Oh, all right. So where were we? I know what I want to talk about. I want to talk about these records. You guys want to talk about some fast B58s? Some stuff that may or may not count depending on who's reading it. Hey man, that 550 clutch won't let you down. I'm still on mine. Yeah, let's talk about some fast cars, man. So obviously, 'tis the season, not Christmas and Hanukkah and all that. Everybody's going fast, right? Everybody's breaking records. Everybody's setting their fastest 60 to 130s, quarter miles, all that stuff. And this is just how it works. You know, DAs drop, temperatures drop. And if you've got the prep and the grip, you're going to go fast. But it has been killing me when people message me about other people's fast cars. I don't know what to tell you, man. Especially like these stock engine records and stuff like that. When people ask me, is it really stock? Is it really on an off-the-shelf map? Is the turbo really stock? How do we know they're not secretly on a built this and that? I don't know, man. I'm just here for the show, just like you guys are. Clearly, I'm not breaking any records anytime soon, right? But it's just so funny. I don't know what you guys think about like these records and stuff and people posting their times. I think the one that most people have been talking about lately, obviously Body has broken a bunch of records with his cars. He just got them within like 6 months or whatever they're flying, which makes sense. I mean, we talked about it. We kind of know what the recipe is, just nobody wants to spend money on all the ingredients. I get it. I don't want to either. But at the same time, it's like he has no reason to lie, right? Like he shares pretty much everything that he does with his car. And one thing I know for sure is he has a lot of cars that are faster than he ever was with the same mods. Like he was tuning the stock engine record cars running times that blew his engine. Does that make sense? Like he had a car that had the stock engine record running times that were faster than the times he ran when he blew his engine. And I mean, it's kind of a part of the game because you also know what you do this year isn't going to matter next year. Somebody's going to be faster. Somebody's come out with new technology, whatever. But it's just like he has no reason to lie about it. All he's been doing is collecting data from everybody that he's been tuning and sending out that are running faster than he ever was on similar setups and doing it himself. So I don't know. I mean, it is what it is at the end of the day. This isn't going to be like some regulated race. Nobody's going to be under your hood verifying parts and, you know, doing all this stuff. He doesn't have to get on a dyno right before he gets on the drag strip to prove anything. But I don't see why he would lie. And there are a lot of other people like, you know, that aren't on his level that are posting times too. And it's just like, what do they have to gain outside of a little bit of social media clout? I mean, I know it's addictive to a lot of people, but in reality, they're not making any money off of it. They're not doing anything other than saying, hey, I'm the fastest guy with XYZ. So I don't know. And I mean, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm being naive or something, but I don't really see the point in lying about it. It doesn't really make sense to me. And I know a lot of people that have been running the same setup all summer, never talked about it, never wrote about it because they weren't doing anything with it. And then temps dropped and boom, now they're flying. The only difference is better conditions. But that doesn't mean that it's not possible or it didn't happen, you know? But yeah, I mean, I can't go in with x-ray goggles and like confirm they're really stock engine or stock transmission or only running 30 PSI. I got my first YouTube comment. YouTube's working. It only took me almost an hour. God gosh, why did I pick this up, man? Why did I decide to do this? I have no idea what I'm doing. Oh. But appreciate you guys hopping on. Thank you to everybody jumping into the YouTube stream. Sorry there were so many issues earlier. I guess I had to reset my entire house. The only thing I didn't do is disconnect the electricity going to the street. And now it's working. But yeah, man, records. That's the other thing. So I see somebody commenting about the trans. So he has a stock engine record or a stock turbo record, but they've got a $20,000 transmission set up to do it. I mean, it is what it is, right? So for example, another big one that people are saying is he took a bunch of weight out of the car. If I run more boost than you to run a faster time, does that mean that my car isn't faster? It's faster, right? It's running a more aggressive tune. It's making more power, or, whatever the recipe is for it to make more power. If I'm running race gas, if I'm running ethanol mixed with methanol, mixed with, whatever the crackhead is selling down the street, like, does that mean that my times weren't real just because you don't live on my street and you don't have access to Jimmy on the corner? Not my problem. The car did what it did, right? And I mean, because if he was just really trying to set the stock turbo record and that was like his whole point, he's going to put everything around it to maximize what that stock turbo can do. And so it just is what it is. If the stock turbo can put out 700 foot-pounds of torque, you're not going to be able to get past that limit with the stock transmission. So he built it. If the stock turbo launches harder at 4,000 RPMs than 2,000 RPMs, and you need a high stall converter to hit that, he upgraded it. And that was his only stipulation. He wanted the stock turbo record. So, I mean, again, it's kind of like it is what it is. He just kind of went with his goals, used the recipe that he knows works, put it all together. It costs way more money than anybody wants to put into it. I get it. I'm not trying to get his record. I never will. But he showed what it's capable of. And I mean, because at the end of the day, it's still a micro record. So you can't really argue about a micro record. You just can't. Like, somebody that cares about it is going to put their all into just making that happen. It's not going to make sense to anybody else. So if you're not the fastest out there, grabbing onto a micro record and saying, hey, I'm the fastest for this setup, that just means I want people to think that what I did is impressive. That's it. There's somebody faster than you, but you feel like what I did is still pretty impressive, or nobody else has done what I did. Okay. You get your brownie points. That's pretty much all that comes with it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just something I've been thinking about a lot, because we've been getting a lot of comments and people arguing on some of my videos and stuff. And I'm all for it. Like, you guys don't piss me off, right? You guys make me lose any sleep. But it's a good discussion point, because if I can add boost to my car to make it faster, but I can't drop weight from my car or run stronger components, run components that can like maximize my setup, then what's really the point? I would much rather take weight out of my car than add more power and put more stress on the components, because that makes me accelerate faster, brake faster, turn faster. Everything is better when you drop weight. Or even like, what if I got a base model 240, like stripped down, cloth seats, like everything's manual, no sunroof. Does that mean that my car isn't going to be able to set records because it's not a full weight sunroof, like fully loaded car? That's not realistic either, But yeah, that's just something I've been thinking about a lot, because I like light cars. I like making my car lighter, and people don't think about, things like big turbos. That adds weight to your car. Like, you can very easily put stuff on your car that makes more power but makes it slower because it's adding weight or adding resistance. When you put like really aggressive tires on your car, it makes you slower. It's stickier. So that's additional friction that your car has to overcome to accelerate. So you don't want like a super sticky, super aggressive tire to go out and racing on your 350 horsepower stock turbo car, and then you're running why a guy on all seasons is beating you, because he's driving on pixie sticks. Like, his car just rolls. he's got less rolling resistance, so he can drag you. But that stuff, you know, you got to think about. It's just kind of like your priorities and everything. Anyway, I think I killed that discussion. Hopefully, if you guys have any other thoughts, feel free to leave a comment or whatever. I can respond. But I thought that was something we should talk about. Yes, YouTube comments coming in. Thank you guys for joining. Sorry there were so many issues earlier. It's having internet problems, but thankfully it seems like it's working now. Let's see. This stuff is a learning curve. Yeah, man. And thankfully, you know, people call me an OG or whatever, but I haven't even been in it for that long, right? I got my car in 2017. The B58's been out since 2015. There are people that have had their cars since new, like since 2015 in the community. So there's a lot of information out there, a lot of history. But yeah. Yeah, I said pixie sticks. Let's see. Oh, I appreciate it, man, but I don't drink coffee. This is my caffeine of choice. I don't really drink alcohol. I don't really drink a lot of caffeine, but if I need something like now, I get an energy drink. I go for the hard stuff. Let's see. Hola. Shout out to everybody from everywhere, man. A lot of you guys are tuning in from all over. I'm trying to learn Spanish, actually. I'm on Duolingo. All right, let's get back to questions. Have I swapped trans fluid yet? Yes, I have. I have a video showing how to do it. The only thing to make sure you keep in mind, when you do that final fill, make sure the engine is running. I didn't show that in my video because I filled it up. Then I went for a drive and made sure it got through all the systems or everything. And then when I got back, I tried to top it off again, and it took like an extra liter. So make sure you do that final fill with the engine running. That makes it take a lot more fluid. And that's why in the video, it seemed like I was only able to get like 5 out of the 7 liters or something like that. So only thing to make sure you follow up on. Let's see. Any thoughts on EBC red stuff? I gotta apologize. I haven't been keeping up with EBC. I ran that on my Jetta actually, but I ended up switching to Hawk and never looked back. So I can't remember where red stuff lands on the spectrum. Pretty much brake pads, the only problems you can run into is they can be noisy and they can create a lot of dust. So if you don't care about that for daily driving, then a win is a win. The only thing I don't recommend is going with ceramic pads because their whole shtick is like they don't create a lot of dust, but they have really poor braking performance. Like on the 340, the daily brake pads that were on there from the previous owner, they're ceramic pads, and they are not doing the car any justice. They're fine, but there are much better daily pads out there that'll give you better performance. You just, you know, got to wash your wheels every once in a while. But yeah, look for a pad. Like usually they call it like street and track. It'll be like right in the middle. It might dust a little bit more, but it shouldn't like squeal or anything. That's the kind of pad you want for daily driving. Said, bro, send me a turbo kit. Bro, I honestly wish I had it like that. I wish I had like a company where I could just like bless you guys and send out parts and do things. Like I do a couple giveaways on my Patreon. Shameless plug. Shout out if you guys want to be a part of future giveaways, join the Patreon. But yeah, I mean, I try with what I have. I give away dash cams and stuff like that, but I just don't have it like that yet. One day I'll be like these guys that raffle off a different car every 2 months, and I'll just raffle off, or not even raffle, I'll just give away turbo kits and all kinds of upgrades. That would be awesome, right? Working on it. I'll get there one day. Let's see. Would I advise a stage 2, or would I advise a catch can on a stage 2 plus setup? So we can talk about this too. Let's talk PCV. A lot of people have been asking me about PCV issues and their cars smoking, or, you know, they're getting ready to replace their PCV. So what should they do? My personal opinion is always do the delete. If you're having a problem, don't just replace the diaphragm. Get rid of it if you can get away with it. The only downside is sometimes you get the smell of oil in the car, but the kit's like Ross Racing. It runs the delete hoses under the car, so you don't really smell it that much. If you want a catch can, you can get one. But generally speaking, our cars run very clean. So I have dump tubes on both of my cars. They're completely dry. I was about to think if I could just pull it out of the car, but it's completely dry. Like there's no oil in it or anything. So I don't really worry about it. If my car started pushing oil, then I would run it to a catch can, because you definitely don't want to be dumping oil under your car, especially right in front of your rear tires. So when you go to floor it, you end up being a Mustang and slamming into a barrier or something. But it's kind of just personal preference. But if you get a catch can on our cars and it's running clean, it's mostly going to collect like water and like this water oil mix. It's not really stuff that, personally speaking, I don't feel like it's a big deal, because your car is going to generate a bunch of condensation and stuff on cold starts. That's all you're going to collect in your catch can. So I'm a fan of dump tubes. Unless you're actually pushing oil, then of course get a catch can to catch it. Let's see, I'm not fighting you, man. Clearly, I've got Ross on both cars. It is what it is. That's a that's a long story too. Let's see. What do I think of adrenaline trans fluid? So that's a good question. I am going to be upgrading to what is it? Oh no, I can't even remember what it's called. But the adrenaline fluid, the one that Rod Sutphin and a lot of the higher horsepower guys recommend. I'm going to be switching over to that, and my goal is to basically just get the most reliability and consistency out of my car next year. I haven't had any issues, so I don't think it's a requirement personally, but it's better. So why not just run what's better? That's kind of the position I'm in now. I've done a lot of testing to show you guys that a lot of stock components can handle a lot, but if you want to upgrade and just make sure you're using the best, then it's worth it. If you're going to be changing fluid, why not go with the best? So yeah, I wouldn't lose sleep over it if you already have OEM fluid in there, but the next change, just upgrade. It's not going to set you back that much more, and you get that added reliability. Let's see. We got a couple questions on Instagram. So does running an open dump make your car run more efficient, and do you need a revision for it? I have not done this yet, but I do plan on it. I want to, I guess I should put it that way. I haven't ordered anything or got anything started, but like I said, I like dropping weight from my car. The exhaust weighs a lot, even though it's at the bottom of the car, so not really a huge penalty for like handling and stuff like that. I would love to try to run an open dump and just see how my times improve. I'm also going to do some additional testing with like removing seats and stuff like that, so we can do some back-to-back checks and see how much it makes the car faster. But besides that, I don't think it's a huge deal. The car can adjust for a lot. It would be good to get a revision for it if you plan on running it all the time, because your wastegate duty cycle will probably go down. Your efficiency will probably go up a little bit. The car can definitely make more power with an open dump compared to like a straight pipe, but I don't think it's going to like cause issues if you don't get a revision. So that's just my thoughts. I mean, like I said, I haven't tried it yet. Feel free to reach out to more people that actually use them, but I know a lot of people that just slap them on for weekends, go race, and then they put their stock cat back on for daily driving. Let's see. If I had an E50 map and a 93 map, would I just switch or would I get flex fuel? That's a really good question. Personally, after switching to flex fuel, I never looked back. And that was something that I really wanted. I've always wanted to run ethanol, so I just ran it when we had options for it. But once you have the flex fuel capability, it's just so much easier. You don't have to think about it. And especially because, like I said, I pretty much only run 93 or full E85. So whatever that one tank is in between switching where it's mixed, I don't have to try to get it right at E40 or something, or run my gas tank down to 5 miles to empty and then fill up with new fuel. I can just fill up, in 2 tanks, I'm back on 93, or 2 tanks, I'm back on full E85. So it's mostly for convenience, but it is very convenient, especially if you travel and stuff like that. So I would not go back to map switching now, personally. Let's see what else we got. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you for joining in. Again, sorry there were so many YouTube issues earlier. Internet was just being sucky. Let's see. So let's talk about brake pads again. So on my 340i, I have some brand of ceramic pads. That's what was on the car. I actually didn't even check them until I got to the track and swapped my pads for track duty. But I do plan on probably switching to the same ones I run on the 440. I have the Ferodo DS 2500, I believe. And it works great. It does create a little bit of extra dust compared to stock, but it stops a lot better and it can handle a lot more heat, which is a win-win for me. So I plan on daily driving with that once I swap those out. And then at the track, I run Hawk DTC 60s. So the 5.0 pads are okay for like street driving and stuff like that. Even like the HPS, I think, is kind of like their other street track pad. But when I drove at the track with those pads on a previous build, granted not the 340, but I took those pads to the track and I still ran into brake fade issues. So for me personally, I would rather get an actual race pad for the track, and especially with our cars, since it's so easy to swap them out, just do it. And it's going to be loud. It's going to make a bunch of brake dust and have a lot of stuff that you wouldn't want for daily driving. But if you're taking it to the track, get an actual track pad. So that's the only difference for me. And then, keep up with your rotors, make sure they're not cracking or wearing down too quick, because they will wear faster with real track pads. Question. I like talking brakes too. Let's see. I'm struggling between a Flowmax and a Pure 800. Okay, we can talk about this too. Let's talk about turbo upgrades. Obviously I'm a big fan of full frame upgrades, but they're much more expensive than hybrids, right? So I get it. A lot of people would rather go with a hybrid, looks like stock, especially if you have emissions testing and stuff. Those of you guys in Europe that don't want to deal with that on, inspections, you want something that looks stock. The problem for me is they're not that different from each other. Like, all of them have the same limitations. So I know you guys kind of lose sleep a lot, like Pure 800, Flowmax, turbo systems, or CTS, or like all these different ones. And generally speaking, they all make the same power. They all make enough power to overwhelm your transmission. So I know some people were like kind of laughing at me because back in November, a lot of people were saying, "What's up, man? We were just talking about your turbo earlier." We can come back to that. But yeah, a lot of people were asking me, which turbo kit to go with. And if it was November, I told you go with whatever you could get on sale for Black Friday. Whatever was having the best discount, go for it. Because I mean, that's really what it's about. It's like you're going for a value option, so get the one that gives you the best value. But yeah, I mean, I've heard of issues with Flowmax turbos. I've heard of issues with Pure 800 turbos. I haven't heard of any turbo systems issues, but I'm sure they have some too. It's really kind of hit or miss. But yeah, what's up, Alex? That's funny you joined right when we started talking about turbos. You must have had your radar started going off. But yeah, so I mean, if you're looking at two different turbos and you're trying to decide, let me know. For me personally, like I said, if it's going to overwhelm your transmission, you don't want to buy an HP70 or like a Pure Drivetrain Solutions upgraded transmission. Just go ahead and get your whatever you can get for like a good value, whatever's in stock and a good price. That's the one to go for. I know you heard it, man. You were like the $1 million man. Had to hop in and make a comment. I told him, I was like, if you guys look at the Remnant Turbo, I wish I still had that 3D printed one to show these guys, because it's like the size of my head. It is a full frame turbo welded onto a stock style like runner system. Because when I put it in my car, and granted, I haven't ran any other bottom mount turbos, so maybe like Big Boost and other ones fit like this too, but it was literally like this close to touching my motor mount. Like, it's so big and hangs so low. And I was just like, is somebody really going to try to make this work? And apparently he did. That's funny. Let's see, I know 255/40 is the OEM rear size option. Is that really necessary? Or shouldn't 225 be enough to handle stock turbo? Yes. And it kind of depends on the tire too, right? So if you get a really aggressive tire, like a summer tire, you're going to be able to push a lot more power. Honestly, I ran some draggy times with my Kelford Cams and stuff. I'll be posting that soon. I did my dyno as well. I'm still on all season tires, stock 255s. The problem I think a lot of people have is they're trying to literally floor it in first and they want it to hook. And that just is a lot more difficult. I said, put it that way. But for daily driving, highway rolls and stuff like that, our stock tires are pretty good. Our stock tire widths are pretty good, especially if you're X drive. I would not go with a more aggressive tire than you need. But if you want to stick with 225 square, like your 18x8 setup, just make sure it's like a good summer tire and it'll get you where you need to go. But rolling resistance slows you down too. So just keep that in mind. If you get super wide, super heavy, super grippy tires, it can actually make you slower if you don't need them. Let's see, thoughts on X Delete? Yeah, that's a good question too. So a lot of people have asked me about X Delete. Both of my cars are rear wheel drive, so all I can do is tell you what I know or what I've heard, I guess, from their information and from like tuners and stuff that know how it works. So the biggest problem with our cars and the reason why it can't just disable all-wheel drive like M cars is there is no way to fully disengage the clutches. And I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is basically you can reduce the pressure in the transfer case that's being used to transmit power, front or rear, but you cannot completely disengage them. So when you're using X Delete and doing burnouts and having fun with your friends, you're burning up your clutches. And that's the problem. So, again, it works functionally. It's probably okay to use from time to time. But people that are like, oh, I'm going to drive with X Delete daily until I need to go to the track, and then I'll launch it in all-wheel drive, or I'll do a burnout with X Delete to warm up my rear tires, and then I'll race with all-wheel drive. It's sacrificing your transmission or your transfer case for that functionality. So for that reason, I'm not a fan. It's kind of like drag mode. It's something that works if you really want it, but just know that you're potentially damaging components and making them fail sooner. So personally, if I had X drive, I would not use it. Let's see, am I going to purchase the CSF manifold? That's not the plan right now. I may upgrade the BimmerNetwork one next year, just kind of depending on how things go. But I don't have anything on order. Like I said, all that stuff to like support more power or whatever, I can't really take advantage of it right now. It's cold. Like I'm not having heat issues. I'm not having any of those problems. So I'm not really rushing it. All right. A lot of people have been asking me about MG Flasher. We got a question, when will MG Flasher add flex fuel? And I'm not going to say that MG forgot about the B58 platform, but at this point, I almost think like it's not going to happen. I'm sure eventually it will, but it doesn't seem like it's a priority for them. And pretty much everybody else has it at this point. So you kind of got to wonder like what the holdup is or what issues they're running into. But potentially they're just prioritizing other projects. So I wouldn't wait for it personally. At this point, I would probably just try out MHD and see what you can get away with. I think MG also has kind of like boot mode. You can sell your license or something or transfer it once. So that's what I've been recommending to people lately because I've been telling you guys all year, just wait, just wait, just wait. And now it's like, it's not going to happen. It's kind of like the DME unlock for Gen 2 guys. Like, just wait, just wait. Everybody keeps saying something's on the horizon, and then nothing's happening. I don't know if or when it's ever going to happen. But yeah, sorry, man. I know that's not great news. It's probably not what you wanted to hear, but that's honestly my personal opinion right now. Let's see, what's the best way to achieve 450 to 500 without changing any major components? Uh, I mean, a downpipe, fuel pump, and ethanol will get you there. If you want to do it without ethanol, you're going to need a bigger turbo. If you're not willing to do either of those, you can also try race gas. That should be able to get you there with like a stock high pressure fuel pump. That's pretty much it. Or meth injection, of course. But you're going to need something other than an intake and a downpipe on just like pump gas. You're even with ethanol. To get closer to 500, you need an additional power adder. Let's see, do you need the TU high pressure fuel pump to run E on Gen 1? No, you do not. I made a video on that too, so definitely just check out the channel. I showed you guys, I tested all of the flex fuel blend, well, not all of the flex fuel blends, but various amounts of ethanol on the stock fuel pump and an upgraded fuel pump just to see how it works, which setup is faster. I found out the best ethanol mix, all that stuff. I posted that in a whole video with data, dragging numbers, all that stuff. So hopefully that can answer all your questions. But yeah, I say this at least 10 times a day. You can run any amount of ethanol you want with any setup you want, as long as you have the right tune for it. That's the only limiting factor. Let's see what else we got. Yeah, keep in mind, again, because I know a lot of people asking about flex fuel and stuff too. We just got flex fuel, right? Like a year ago. Before that, we have been running ethanol for years. Like they came out with the E30 maps, I think, like around the end of 2019. Because I got my tune. Man, you guys are going to see how long I've had this going. So I got my tune when it was released in like March or April of 2019. That's when our cars got unlocked and boot mode and MHD started supporting our platforms. I ran stage 193, drove that for about 2 or 3 months, started running logs, saw a bunch of timing corrections. And I was like, okay, I found a station close to me that has a little bit of E85. So I put like 2 gallons of E85 in there. Boom, perfect timing. Did that for literally like 2 tanks. So whatever that translates to, like a week and a half for me. And then I was like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I running a pump gas map when there's an E30 map? So then I went ahead and started running stage 1 E30, got my little test kit, figured out what the ethanol mix was, never went back. I ran E30 plus, well, except for mixing in a pump gas fill every once in a while to flush out the fuel system. But other than that, I always run at least E30. And I never had a flex fuel sensor. All I did was use the test kit, ran logs to be sure I wasn't like overwhelming my fuel system, and it was perfect. I loved it. Still love it. But yeah, flex fuel just makes it easier, man. It's not really a requirement. Let's see. Oh, that's interesting. Rear main seals. Have we heard of those going bad? I don't know. If you guys have heard of somebody having a rear main seal go bad, let me know. That's not something that I've heard of. And I mean, because when I did my clutch, everybody was like, oh, replace your rear main seal just in case. And I'm like, I'm at 10,000 miles, man. It's not going to fail. It's not a problem that I'm worried about anytime soon. But maybe on higher mileage cars, I don't know. Let's see. Isn't that a pain to do all the time? Absolutely. Absolutely. Just filling up twice every time is annoying. Imagine somebody pulls up behind you and you're filling up your car, you take it out, they put their car into drive, they start inching forward thinking they're going to pull into the gas pump behind you, and then you swipe your card again and take out another gas pump and start filling up with something else. It's annoying no matter what. Ethanol mixes are not fun, but I like going fast more than I'm worried about convenience. So that's why I always ran E30. You do your test kit, it takes like 3 minutes. Put it in your little test tube, see what the ethanol content is, do the calculation on your app, and then fill up. But yeah, don't do it if you're in a rush. If you're late for a date, just fill up with 93 and tell her you're sorry you lost your race. She'll probably still go on a second date with you. Don't worry. Let's see. Is anyone on BimmerPost? Of course, man. I came from BimmerPost. BimmerPost was like my addiction before I really started creating a lot of YouTube videos. I was on there daily, posting everything that you guys see in videos. Imagine if it was way more drawn out, way more words, way more boring. I know it's boring as is. Imagine if it was worse. That was me on BimmerPost. I was posting these long, drawn out threads, technical discussions, data analysis, and stuff because that's just what I was interested in. Especially when we were able to tune our cars and I wanted to like figure some things out. Yeah. It wasn't until later that somebody was like, maybe you should put this in video format instead. And then I started making videos. Yeah, appreciate it, man. What is the holiday in Canada? Oh, now I'm drawing a blank. But happy holidays, man. Appreciate you joining. Let's see. We got some questions on Instagram. What to do if you're losing coolant on the B58? So I've got my test kit. I'm not going to get up and get it. Yeah, Boxing Day. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah, what to do if you're losing coolant in your car. So I don't have my test kit right next to me, but basically what you're going to do is pressurize your system. And what happens when you actually pressurize it, it's kind of similar to getting your car up to temperature, because the problem is a lot of times when you drive your car, you have a leak, but when you turn it off, you can't find it. So the pressure tester builds up pressure in your cooling system. And if there is a leak or a crack or something that only gets exposed when it gets up to temperature and builds up pressure, it'll expose it. So that's what I recommend doing. If you don't have the test kit, bring it to a shop that has one. They will hook it up to compressed air, pressurize it, and then just kind of look around to see if they see coolant coming out. But for me, I knew I wasn't having any coolant leaks, so that's how I knew it was just the cap. Let's see, am I doing the 440 giveaway today? So I wasn't going to bring it up. That's top secret classified information. We'll talk about that later. Let's see, I hear a lot of B58 guys say meth. Is it worth it? Yeah, absolutely. If you don't have ethanol, methanol is the next best thing, in my opinion. It's a lot more corrosive, so not something that I typically recommend putting like in your fuel tank. But you know, it can support a lot of power. It actually has higher content, higher octane than ethanol, but it's just more corrosive and a lot harder on your fuel system. So that's why most people add like a separate set of fuel lines and everything and a separate tank in their trunk in order to spray methanol. And of course, Body said that he runs it on all his cars, so now everybody wants it. A local AutoZone, there are a lot of options, but my personal preference, there's one where there's a unicorn that is howling to the moon, and it's on the front. So on the back, you won't be able to see it. It's kind of like a sleeper setup. If somebody's driving up to you, they won't know that you upgraded your seat covers. But as soon as you get in the car, every time you open the door, you'll see it right in your face. And it's just kind of hard to really give up something like that. So I don't show it in videos because I don't want people to be scared to race me and like run out of town. But I do have them on both of my cars. It's a part of the reason why my car is currently making 8,000 horsepower. But you know, kind of do with it what you please, because it will break your transmission if you haven't upgraded it yet. What else we got? Let's see. Common reasons that off-the-shelf maps lose power. This is a good question. So I know a lot of people say that their car feels like it's slower and they're panicking. They want me to read their logs. 99.9% of the time, it's just you getting used to it. And it sounds stupid, but literally like your butt dyno is not calibrated and you're just getting used to the power. So my recommendation, first of all, is always run a draggy. You know, if you think that your car is getting slower, get some actual data on how fast it is to see if you can compare it, not somebody else on the internet, compare it to your car before and after. Just like you run logs every once in a while, you can run a draggy every once in a while. Just get a frame of reference of how your car works. Now, if you are sure that everything else is working properly and it is getting slower, I would check into other things like your coolant levels. If you're getting high IATs, you might be experiencing coolant loss. Make sure your turbo isn't on its way out. Make sure your fuel is good. Make sure you're not suddenly getting ignition timing corrections and stuff because you put in winter blend fuel and everybody's fuel quality is crap this time of year, stuff like that. Or just run E85 year round. That's what I'm trying to do. All right, let's get one more Instagram question. So here's another question. So does the flex fuel analyzer tell you how much octane is in your tank? So I don't know if you meant octane or ethanol, but I'll try to answer both questions. So yes, it does tell you how much ethanol is in your fuel lines, and it's mounted like right next to the high pressure fuel pump. So it's basically measuring the fuel right before it gets into the engine. If you fill up with ethanol and you've had pump gas in your car, you'll have to drive a couple miles before the content goes up because it's got to mix in your tank, make it to the fuel pump through all the fuel lines, and then make it to the engine. But it is a very accurate way to read how much ethanol is in your fuel lines. But as far as octane is concerned, it does not tell the difference. So if you're switching between 91 and 93, or if you're in Europe, you switch from 95 RON to 102 RON, it's not going to tell the difference. And that's something I think some people were concerned about or not fully understanding. But it only works for ethanol content. So if you're switching between 91 and 93 or something like that, flex fuel sensor won't help you. And really, if you understand how a flex fuel sensor works, it makes sense. It's not measuring fuel quality, it's measuring the absence of fuel. So it's not even really telling you that 85% of your fuel is ethanol. It's just telling you that 15% of your fuel is gas. Everything else is something else. So it could be water, it could be ethanol, methanol, it could be basically anything else like detergents, fuel additives. That's all it's really telling you is this percentage of your fuel is not just gasoline. But since we know, like generally we're mixing it with ethanol, that's why we associate it with ethanol content. So little tip there, little background information. Let's see, am I talking about meth or 50-50 blends? So I actually haven't even considered 50-50 meth in a long time. I know some people still do that, and it's still technically recommended by most companies like Snow Performance and stuff because it's less corrosive and doesn't damage things as bad. It's not as flammable. But everybody that's fast just runs straight methanol. You're not really going to get a lot of advantage from spraying water. So straight methanol is the way to go, in my opinion, if you're trying to make power. Let's see. What are my thoughts on the best tire brand or size for 700 horsepower? So it depends on the type of driving you're doing. I mean, if you want to launch from a dig, get a Mickey Thompson, get a Hoosier, something real sticky and slick. It's not going to be good for daily driving, but it should help you hook from, low speed. If you just like tracking your car and you just like highway pulls and stuff like that, you can get some R888Rs. You can get some RE71Rs. There are a lot of really sticky R-Comp tires or even like sticky 200 tread wear tires that are good for daily driving. Let's see, what's another question? Can I make a video on LTFT? Yeah, so I'm working on another video on reading logs. And if you guys haven't seen, I already have a video on how to read logs. It's from years ago. But I'm working on another one that's maybe shorter, a little more to the point, and just kind of updated with all the information and stuff we have now. So I'll try to work on that. It's going to probably be a couple different parts, one that focuses on like fueling, one that concerns like ignition and timing, one that's like looking for boost leaks and stuff like that. And I'm also probably just going to make some videos where I just look at logs and take you guys along with, what that process looks like for me. Because you guys send me logs all the time. So I can show you exactly what I look for when somebody sends me a log and how I identify issues or make sure everything's good. So yeah, I am working on that. Hopefully get to that over the next month or so. I'm just way backed up on videos. If you guys haven't been able to tell, the videos that you're seeing right now were either posted a long time ago, like uploaded a long time ago. I just had to schedule it out, or it's information that's like almost outdated, like it's not really relevant now, but trying to catch up. I do have a low pressure fuel pump install video. I installed the fuel at low pressure fuel pump on my 440. So you should be able to find that on my channel. Let's see. Chassis stabilization issue popped up a few days ago and never came back. So that's a good question. A lot of people ask me about chassis stabilization errors or just different problems that you get on your iDrive. All of it throws a code, guys, no matter what. Even if it's not a drivetrain malfunction or putting your car in lit mode, giving you a check engine light, it throws a chassis code. So if you get an app like Bimmerlink or ISTA or something that can scan the entire car, not just your tuning software that only scans the DME, but something that scans all the modules, it'll tell you what that code was for. So that's kind of the downside. I mean, it's good to get the information and know when something's wrong, but it doesn't give you enough information to actually figure out the issue. You got to scan for codes to see why the code was thrown. But it could be anything. It's probably not your knuckle, but it could be like a wheel speed sensor. It could be an ABS issue. Like usually that's what it comes down to. Mine was my strut on the front left had a sensor that failed, the acceleration sensor. And when I read the code, I thought it was a wheel speed sensor because I read acceleration sensor. I looked more into it, and it's a sensor on the shock that checks how quickly it's going and makes adjustments to make the drive more comfortable for the adaptive suspension. So that threw a chassis stabilization error. There are a lot of things that can do that. Let's see, am I on MHD? Yes, both of my cars are on MHD. On the 440, I started with boot mode. Then I switched to MG Flasher. Then I switched to MHD. And then on the 340, it's always had MHD. So yeah, I can give you a little bit of feedback on all of the apps, but I haven't used boot mode or MG Flasher in over a year now. Let's see. You guys are killing it with the questions, man. All right. So let's talk about used B58s because there's a lot going on now. I mean, obviously, there are just more of the cars. All of our Gen 1 B58s are old now. There are market price impacts, like people bought their cars for 30, 35 grand a year or two ago, and now they're only worth 25 to 30. So it is what it is. The cars are getting cheaper. They're getting higher mileage. More people are getting them. And I made the mistake, apparently, of showing people that you can buy them on Copart. And now I'm constantly getting messages from folks trying to buy junkyard, rebuilt title cars and rebuild them. And I mean, it is what it is. Everybody should be entitled to have a good time. But that does mean that a lot more people are getting lower cost of entry. So they're looking for lower cost of operation and ownership. But I don't think that's really a problem, And even just in general, the BMW aftermarket space is relatively cheap compared to other platforms. Because if you look at options for like Volkswagen, Audi, like that's where majority of my time was before I came into BMW. Tunes are more expensive, upgrades are more expensive, and they make so much less power. They're so much slower. It's just kind of like mind numbing that I can come on here, spend $500 on a fuel pump and a downpipe, and tune my car to make an extra 150 to 200 horsepower. That's insane. So I think in general, like also, of course, we've got another company jumping in, supporting everybody with all their Chinese products and everything else. So that's just super widespread now. But I don't think it's really a problem. The only thing that I don't like seeing is people that don't want to take care of their cars. And they message me because they had an issue 6 months ago that's still happening or something, right? Like when you start having a problem, fix it. But, I don't think there's a problem with people that don't want to spend a lot of money on upgrades and stuff like that. And I don't think cars are generally abused. It's just you just got to maintain it, man. And these cars are so easy to maintain. There's like not a big excuse for not maintaining it. It's kind of like buying a Honda Civic as your first car because, you know, no matter how hard you beat on it, it's just going to work. It's just going to be reliable. You forgot to do an oil change for 3 years. It's still running. So, yeah, I see a lot of people making comments about that. So that's why I wanted to address that one. You know, they're like, oh, B58s are getting clapped out. Owners are cheap. Owners are this and that. That's not a problem. It's even better for us because now more people will be working on lower cost solutions to make our cars faster. Let's see, is driving or racing on a boost leak bad for a motor? I would say, yeah. It really depends though. A lot of times the car will be down on power. It'll protect itself. You know, it'll go into limp mode or whatever. The only issue you might have is if it's fueling related, because like maybe you guys have a boost leak, so it's sucking in air from your charge pipe gasket or something like that, and that's not being measured by the car, so your fueling might be off. That's the only thing that I would say is dangerous. But if you have like a boost leak and your car's down on boost like 5 psi or something like that, like it's okay to drive home. I just wouldn't beat on it deliberately knowing that it's messed up. Andre came in. What's up, man? He just came to tell me I'm slow, and then he's going to go back. Let's see, another question. So if I'm looking at logs and I'm wondering if it's having like fuel pressure issues, I would say anything that's dipping more than like 200 psi is not ideal. That means that your fuel system's being overwhelmed. When it actually crashes, depends, because when I think of fuel pressure crashing, I think about like misfires and, you know, like the issues that come with it. And that depends on like the boost pressure you're running, how much power you're making, and it just varies. Because what I'm learning is it's not even the car just running out of fuel, it's the car basically calculating its limits and shutting off injectors. So you're basically, it's sounding like misfires and stuff, but really it's the car like trying to protect the engine and cutting power by disabling cylinders. So if you're getting to that point, you've gone way too far. If I see fuel pressure dips more than, like I said, 200 psi, then I'm going to be looking into trying to address it. Let's see, any T3 developments? Yes, I'll be posting an updated video on the Gen 3 B58 next week. So it'll probably be next Saturday. Next Wednesday should be my Kelford video with my dynos and draggies and all that stuff. And then, yeah, Saturday we'll be talking about the Gen 3 B58. A little bit of news. Probably not great news, not what you guys want to hear, but it's news, so at least we know what's going on. Let's see, is there anything that I do when I'm storing my car? So I haven't been doing a good job the past couple of years, I'll be honest. Oh, first of all, hold on, let me jump over. SPL, thank you guys. Yes, I did. So for those of you guys that saw, I installed those end links on my cars. It worked great. I installed it and it went on really simply. Of course, it's just like 2 nuts on each corner. After that, I did my lowering springs. So I installed the H&R springs and then I got the alignment. So it feels great. Like everybody's asking me how much it messes up the ride and all of that stuff. And it's perfect. Once you get the adjustable end links installed and get everything dialed in with like a good alignment, it drives very similar to stock. When you go and load it up around a turn, it's exactly what you expect. So I wish I had gotten them sooner. I haven't really made them a priority on like any of my previous builds. I was kind of focused on other aspects of suspension upgrades. But with this build, with the 340, I'm focused more on suspension compliance and keeping things neutral and keeping handling neutral. And the end links get you there. It's a big one for sure. Next step would be coilover so I could get a proper corner balance as well. But even without it, it is like a significant improvement. It's more comfortable when you're just cruising, and it loads up more neutral, and kind of expected, just gives you driver confidence when you're driving hard. And how much camber? Oh, where's my spec sheet? I have it right here on the table too. Or maybe I'll put it away. So I've got 3 degrees of camber in the front now and 2 degrees in the rear. And the rear is maxed. So I was maxing out at 1.5 degrees in the rear with the stock suspension, and then the lowering springs got me to 2 degrees. So it should be good next year. I'm excited to try it out, see how much better it is. But yeah, thanks again, you guys, for helping support that, because I knew it was important, but it was even better than I expected, for sure. Let's see. Do I disable cold starts in the winter? Yeah, all of my cars have cold start disabled. So I haven't had cold start enabled in 4 years. I'm way behind on questions. Sorry, guys. Let's see. So a lot of people asking what I'm getting next. This question specifically is asking if I'm getting a G80 or a G82. It's not in the plans right now. I do plan on upgrading the 340 at some point. It's not like a forever car for me. I always want to put something in that spot that I can use for the channel. So honestly, after next year, maybe another year, I'll have probably mostly expired what I plan on doing with the car. It is a good daily driver and everything, but I just want to keep it mixed up. So jury's out. I don't know. You guys let me know what you want to see me get into. Gosh, I'm struggling now. G80 and G82 is probably outside of the budget unless something significantly changes over the next year. But I do plan on upgrading, hopefully something newer, maybe another 2-door car. I'm a coupe fan personally, but yeah, we'll see. But I wouldn't expect to see me with like $100,000 M3 or something next year. That's probably not going to happen. Oh yeah, man. So the main thing for the camber, of course, I got camber plates. You can't adjust front camber without camber plates. That should be able to get you around -3, even probably -3.5. But the problem is the rear. You're not going to be able to get the rear enough camber to match the front so that it has like balanced handling. It's going to be too tail happy. So that's why I lowered the car, because when I went to the track earlier this year, like I said, I had -1.5 rear, and then in the front, it was -2.1. We had plenty of room to adjust it more, but it just didn't make sense. So now that I lowered it and I have the extra camber in the rear, we were able to push the front farther out. So yeah, and Putnam needs a lot of camber. So if I go back next year, it'll be huge. I think you should get a G82 and race with Andre. Okay. Oh yeah, man. That's a big point too, because for me, lower control arms are one of the biggest improvements that you can add that people don't consider. And a lot of people ask me, should they upgrade their control arms? But they don't even know why. They just hear that it's an upgrade. They don't know what to expect when they put it on. For me, on my 440i, I do have the control arms, and this car's rear wheel drive too, but I didn't even adjust the length because I had camber plates already. So yeah, but it's basically the best control arm upgrade if you have an X-Drive car. I just wouldn't actually lengthen it, but taking advantage of the roll center correction and less deflection at the bearings and stuff, it's still a significant improvement. And I had to dial back camber just to make sure the car wasn't trying to drift around every turn. So it was immediately noticeable. And if you're low, it gives you more tire clearance, because now you're going to have that much more camber gain as the wheels compress. So you're not going to go into positive camber and have it hitting your fenders. So yeah, that's another upgrade I was considering. I haven't gotten there yet, but when I put it on the 440, it was immediately noticeable. Oh, that's interesting. So if you loosen the axle nut while you're installing it, it'll prevent the axle from being pulled when you install the control arm. That does make sense. And just reassemble everything so it's neutral. I hadn't considered that. And yeah, because both of my cars are rear wheel drive. So I just knew if you extend it too far, then it could create issues. But that's a good point. Yeah, if you have X Drive, you can run all of their upgrades. The thing with the control arms is you can increase the length of the arm to add camber. And that's what I was saying for X Drive cars. I would typically recommend camber plates instead. Because some people had issues like when you put the M3 arms on your car and it pushes it out, whatever it is, like half an inch. It increases your camber, but it also pulls out the axle and can cause issues. And I think Kies did a video when he did the M3 arms and he broke like 2 axles in a week and didn't know what was going on and then realized it was the control arms. So that was my only like stipulation, but you can still take advantage of the control arms for better front end grip, better dynamics, especially if you lower your car. It helps correct your suspension geometry. So lots of benefits there. Lots of stuff that we don't talk about because all people want to do is run a TU pump and race Hellcats and stuff. But our cars are very capable if you upgrade them properly. Let's see. I'm sorry, guys. I'm still falling behind on questions. I'm talking too much. If you want me to ramble, start asking me about suspension upgrades. That'll get me. Oh, all right. Yeah, let's talk about built engines. So, especially now since we were talking about records earlier, everybody's wondering, what to do when they build their engine, when to build their engine, stuff like that. Generally speaking, if you upgrade your car, you're going to be putting more wear on it, but there's going to be like a certain point where it's past its limit and it gives out. And that's why a lot of times when you see somebody's engine fail, it's like at the end of the quarter mile, they lift and then there's just like a big puff of smoke and it's like something let go. So it's kind of like up to you when you decide when to build it. It's never too soon, I don't think, especially if you're pushing for big power. But I wouldn't replace anything that hasn't failed. Like I wouldn't make it more complicated than it needs to be. So if your cylinder walls are good, you don't need to sleeve your engine, like stuff like that. You don't necessarily want to overbuild it because then you're sacrificing some of the benefits that a stock B58 has. A lot of people just sleeve their cars, and I don't think that's required for most people. Unless you've damaged it, then you have to replace it. But yeah, most of the fast guys, at least the ones that I've seen, and again, I'm not fast, so speaking from what I've read, not from experience, but rods, pistons, head studs, good head gasket. That's really what you need to keep it together. And a good builder. Make sure you get a builder that knows what they're doing. Yeah, you want me to ramble? Don't get me started. Let's see. Spark plug gap. Yeah, that always comes up. Stock gap. Stock plug, stock gap. You don't even have to tell me your setup. Stock plug, stock gap. You don't have to tell me what fuel you're running. Stock plug, stock gap. It doesn't matter what time of season it is. It doesn't matter what region you're in. It doesn't matter what color your girlfriend's hair is. Stock plug, stock gap. Easy answer. Next question. Let's see. Do I have cams and a Dorch pump or a TU pump? So on the 340, I have the Kelford cams with the stock fuel lobe and the TU pump. On the 440, I have stock cams with a Dorch pump. I don't have a lift kit on either car. Let's see, Copart G82. See, that's a really good suggestion. That's a really good suggestion. The problem is those cars are upside down, like literally. And that's one of the reasons why I guess I'll talk about this because anybody that's considering buying a car from a junkyard or anything, I'm not a body guy. Like I don't do body repairs. That's me is mostly like mechanical stuff, engine stuff, suspension stuff. So I was very nervous initially when I started looking for cars on Copart, because a lot of them are literally upside down. And it's like the faster the car is, the nicer the car is. If it's on Copart, it is wrecked, like demolished. And it's like really scary to think about. But I mean, that's what it takes to total an expensive car. Like, it's got to have repairs that cost more than, whatever 60% of the value. So it's literally cars that like rolled over or wrapped around a tree. And I knew I was going to be tracking it, so I wanted a car that at some point is true, whether it's true when I buy it or whether it's true when I get it fixed. But I was not confident in some of these cars that had the entire left side pushed in, that I could get it square and have something working. And the last thing I wanted is to go and install some parts and find out like bolt holes don't line up or whatever because the car's, twisted like an aluminum can. So yeah, cheap cars on Copart, good deal. Expensive cars, I don't know. I need a little more convincing. I need somebody to help me get my confidence up that it'll work. Because I passed on a 4 Series that only had hatch damage. It was a Grand Coupe. But when I started looking it up, I realized like if you hit the hatch, it can twist the roof. And that was something that I had never even considered, but it can literally like skew the entire car because of how the hatch is. So somebody was talking about they had gotten rear-ended in a Grand Coupe and how much money it cost to get it repaired, and that scared me away too. So yeah, lots of cars on Copart seem like a good deal until you actually try to fix them. Let's see, Gen 3 B58 would be nice. It would be nice, wouldn't it? It would be nice. Would be interesting. Appreciate you joining. What's up, Whitebeard Detail? We've been messaging a lot too. I feel like I've got you in my DMs. Also, remember your engine can still blow with a built engine. Facts. People don't realize no matter what you do on a car, you can still break it, man. You're just finding the next weakest link, and it very well be the exact thing you just upgraded. Nothing on these cars is bulletproof, especially if you don't take care of it. All right, this is a good question. Somebody else asked me this recently. If you guys are coming from, or I assume, at least what I've read, like N55 platforms, N54 platforms, I think they have hybrid turbo off-the-shelf maps. So it's like stage 2H for hybrid. And so people have been asking boot mode, when is it going to come out? MHD, when is it going to come out? And everything that they've been saying since they started supporting our platforms is they're not going to do it on the B58. And I think the reason is because there are so many variations. Like before, everybody just kind of went pure stage 2. But now there's so many options on the market. And a lot of them don't use the stock wastegate, or like, older pneumatic wastegate cars, it wouldn't matter. But now because we have electronic wastegate control in our tunes, it can be a lot more sensitive to the type of turbo that you're running. I ran like the regular stage 2 plus off the shelf map on my car and it ran fine. But I don't think they're going to design a map dedicated for hybrid turbos just for people to blow up their cars and turbos with it and then have to like figure out why. I think they're just not interested. So I wouldn't expect that anytime soon. If it does happen, that's a pleasant surprise and a blessing, not something I would expect. Let's see. What should I do if I'm getting all cylinders fueling misfiring? So I would run a log, bring it to a mechanic, get it fixed. And I mean, misfires are one of those things that people always messaging, hey, my car's misfiring, what should I do? There are so many things that can cause misfires. Everything has to work properly for the car not to misfire. That's the only way you don't get misfires. So if anything is wrong, it can cause misfires. So I can't really just tell you what misfires are for. One thing I will say, if you see like injector shutdown or whatever, that doesn't mean your injectors are bad. That's your car protecting you because you were having misfires. So fix the misfires and that will be your issue. But it could be fuel limits, it could be injectors, it could be PCV, it could be low compression, a lot of different things. Spark plugs, coil packs, wiring, bad tune. Yeah, so I can't really just tell you off the bat what that would be. Let's see. Oh, I'm way behind on questions. Sorry, guys. You guys have been going in. I missed all these messages. Sorry about that. Let's see. You took your car to Mid-Ohio. It's too expensive. And I have to get to work on Monday. So I get it, man. A lot of people ask me about my track stuff too, and like kind of how I do it, or like what works for me. So the first thing is I found a really good group. I run with the Kentucky PCA. They're super family friendly, super laid back. A lot of fast guys, but they're not just there to race each other and like brag about being fast. They have free water. They give us dinner every Friday night and Saturday night, stuff like that. You know, it's just like almost like being on vacation. It's not just you there by yourself trying to keep your car together for the weekend. So I think that's a big part of it, finding a group that, you know, meets your needs. And then also their price is really fair. And if you have a track that's close to you, just go to Motorsports Reg and scroll through their schedule. See who's going to be there, see who has a good price, and run with them, because it should not be $1,000+ in my opinion. You know, it used to be cheaper. It's more expensive than it used to be, but there should be options that are more affordable. So that's my recommendation if you want to get into tracking. Let's see. Do I like MHD or boot mode? So I've got MHD on both of my cars. Primarily, it's for the reflex control. It has a lot of safeties built in for reflex that are better than boot mode's capabilities currently. I think boot mode's going to be adding it at some point, but you know, I don't really wait around for stuff like that or lose sleep over it. And then the other thing is their flex fuel implementation's a lot better. So if you like taking advantage of ethanol mixes on a stock or relatively stock fuel system, MHD is the way to go. It just works. And I showed it in my testing. I did pump gas, then I ran E40, then I filled it up as much as I could. I got like E60 something. And it shows how the tune like scales up boost and scales up timing for your ethanol mix, and then it dials back boost as you get up higher in ethanol mixes to keep it safe when you go to full E85. So yeah. And yeah, it does work perfectly with the reflex. I remember one night I went to run logs and I had no power and I didn't know what was wrong. And I scanned for codes and it showed me like a reflex error, and I realized like I didn't have the reflex plugged in. Imagine what would have happened. I get my new map, 29 PSI, floor it on full E85, and then boom, Kern 417 no more. It would have been over. But it kept me safe because it knew that the reflex wasn't running, so it disabled the map. It limited me to like 10 PSI. So it can even save you from yourself. Let's see. Honestly, the transmission is what worries me the most for our cars. Yeah, me too, man. And I think the 340 is helping me get a better appreciation for the ZF for sure. Because I'm not going to say I wasn't a fan for it, but I just didn't really care, you know. But in reality, it's a really good transmission. It does great for like mixed driving. Manual is more fun to me still, but for a daily driver, especially compared to like older transmissions, like my X5 has the 6-speed, and it sucks. It's really slow. It's not very responsive. And having the extra gears gives you a lot more torque and stuff like that. So yeah, the ZF8's a gem. I would hate to break it or have to like spend a lot of money rebuilding it or upgrading it. You know, I like it in stock configuration. Happy New Year, man. Appreciate you joining. Happy New Year, everybody. Let's see, how far from Cincinnati is Putnam? It's about an hour and a half, or maybe like 2 hours. It's west of Indianapolis. So it depends on what part of Cincinnati you're in. But I'm closer to Putnam than I'm than my distance to Mid-Ohio, which is kind of weird. I'm closer to the track in Indiana than the track that's in my state. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think a lot of people get the wrong idea with track stuff. And I mean, because everybody wants to be fast. Everybody, it's kind of the same thing, like all these quarter mile records and stuff. I want to be impressive. And I did feel like I was being impressive when I went to my last track day because I'm in a stock 340i chasing 911 turbos and GT3s and all this stuff. But in the same sense, there's somebody else with a Cayman that was all over my tail. My buddy with a Camaro SS almost lapped me twice. So it's not just the car, right? It's the driver, it's the experience. So don't focus on being the fastest guy out there. Just learn as much as you can, have fun, keep your car together, make sure you can drive it home. Um, that's a lot more important. And that's why I run with the group I run with. I plan on running with other groups next year, but this group has just been a super reliable experience for me. So I run with them again and again. Let's see, how many Newton meters can the HP 50 handle? So HP 50 is literally the torque rating. 50 references 500 Newton meters. Now we know it can handle a lot more, but that's what the rating is. A lot of people push upwards of, what is the translation? I think it's like 700 Newton meters to 750 or something like that. Usually I reference 600 foot-pounds of torque. That's about the limit, particularly for sixth gear, if you're going to be flooring it. A lot of the records that people set with stock transmission, and people are like, how is this possible? It's because they're not shifting into sixth. Because unless you're trapping over, 138, 140, you don't have to shift into sixth. So you can drag a 60 to 130. You can do a pretty quick quarter mile pass on the stock trans and not run into those limits. Or they just drop torque a lot in sixth gear, so it holds together. But yeah, I'm not really planning on approaching those limits. I'd rather just keep my trans together. Yep. So if you scroll way back on my TikTok, not that you're, you don't have to, of course, but I made a video about that because I was passing 911s. I passed the turbo. I'm like grabbing all these clips, like, yeah, my car is fast. And then I had my buddy in his 150 horsepower Miata that lapped me. And it's just like, what do you do? There's always one. I think the last track day I went to, the fastest car was a Boxster. That had a ridiculous amount of downforce. It looked like a jet plane, but it was fast. He basically never had to lift. He was just wide open throttle except for like 2 turns. So let's see. What's the best way to log? So if you want good data, log wherever your issue is happening. I mean, obviously, if you're just logging to see how your car is running, you would do like a wide open throttle pull the same way you do a dyno run or anything. Put it in 4th or 5th gear, start around 2000 RPM and floor it, shift if you have enough room, run out the next gear. But if you're having an issue at idle, or if you're having an issue in, certain scenarios, just log that scenario. That's the only way to see what the problem is in that scenario. You can even log cold start. You can turn on your log, start the car, and it'll log that entire process. So it can be harder to read in some of those scenarios, but you can log all those instances and see if your O2 sensors are bad, if your Vanos actuators are going out, stuff like that. Oh yeah, ATS. So a lot of you guys asked me to talk about that too, and I told you guys if I haven't ran a part, I can't do a lot other than just share like what's on their product page or whatever, right? But ATS is the real deal. ATS is Applied Torque Solutions, and they are a direct competitor with pure drivetrain solutions. And they've got a lot of high quality builds out there. I can't tell you exactly what's different on the internals. A lot of the stuff that they do, they don't share specifics. A lot of it they design themselves, is proprietary and manufacture themselves. I've also seen some instances where they purchase parts from other manufacturers and maybe overseas, but the combination of parts and how they build it is just as important as what they're buying or what they're the parts that they're using. So very expensive and being the only option, because what we had like level 10 and like something else, and that was trash. But yeah, it's good to have some competition. I don't think that they're necessarily going to kick pure drivetrain solutions like out from the community. I mean, there's always going to be space for them too, but they are a direct competitor that also produces results. So somebody else to consider if you're looking at building your trans. Yeah, we'll see. If I ever find out like more details on the internals, I'll be sure to share it. But at this point, I just know what they share, and it's basically they both work. They both support a lot of power, and they work. Let's see. Yeah, if I was to upgrade, I would probably do an HP 70 just because it's a little more affordable, and on a rear-wheel drive car, it's a lot easier than an X-Drive car. But yeah, it's one of those things. Yeah, man, hit me up. Let me know it's good. You know where to find me. I'll be here. All right, let's get back to questions. What do we got? Okay, let's talk about it. So everybody's asking me about spool injectors, spool fuel pumps, Dodge fuel pumps, lift kits, everything else. My personal opinion is port injection will always have a space if you're making power, because direct injection will always have a limit. The problem is the limit of direct injection with these upgrades is extremely easy to overwhelm other parts of our cars. And we're being spoiled right now because we can easily throw a Dodge Stage 2 and a Pure 800 on our cars and make 600 plus wheel horsepower. But beyond that, you're getting very expensive. Like I said, we're building our transmission, either doing an HP 70 swap, or you're going to be, building it. And then it doesn't even make sense anymore. At that point, the sky's the limit. You might as well build your engine and like do everything else. So I think there's like this multiplier in cost that a lot of people don't consider, and everybody was jumping on the injectors early. And then when they got ready to install it or they got ready to tune it and their tuner was telling them what to expect, they're like, never mind. And all these brand new upgraded parts are going right back in the market and going for sale. And there's nothing wrong with them. It's just people don't want to spend $5,000 to take advantage of a $2,000, $3,000 fuel upgrade setup. So yeah, I mean, they work. I haven't seen anybody have any issues with them as of now, and obviously they're all still really new, so we'll have to give it some time. But that's really what you need to consider is the entire picture. Are you planning on upgrading everything to support the extra fuel you'd get with a lift kit and upgraded injectors? If not, then it's not worth it. At the end of the day, Dodge Stage 2, turbo upgrade, downpipe, that's still king. Run an ethanol mix and send it. It's more than enough to max out all the other systems that get very expensive. Let's see. Should I get cams or should I go PI? So hopefully that answers your question too. It's really up to you. And if you're already building your trans, like some people, they have an issue with their transmission when they were just on a Dodge Stage 2 and Pure 800 or Flowmax. So they upgraded to an HP 70. Now at that point, you might as well get a lift kit and injectors because you're already there. But it's really just kind of up to your personal preference. And port injection is always going to be cheaper and easier to install. So yeah, the biggest benefit with direct injection is you don't need any auxiliary controllers, so it is safer. But that's really it. And it's technically more efficient. All right, let's skip to another one. What's up from Spain? It's probably like 2 a.m. over there. Thanks for joining, man. Let's see. When are we getting a Kern versus one stock race? So I actually am like actively racing one stock right now. You guys just can't see me in the videos because he's so far ahead. So people keep asking me to race Andre. I have raced Andre. I have been racing Andre. I just have not caught up to him yet. So just give me about 3 or 4 years. When I cross the finish line too, then they'll crown him as the winner. But for now, it's still ongoing. I'm almost there. Let's see. And real quick, so everybody asking about setup. So the 340 still stock turbo. I've got everything with the stock turbo. It's pretty stupid, but I enjoyed the process, learned a lot. But yeah, full bolt-on cams, all that stuff, full E85, still stock turbo. And I'll be posting the numbers with the cams and everything next week. All right, so we were asking about my opinion on front mount intakes. I'm not a huge fan of them for a couple of reasons. One, I really don't like how they look. I'm not a flashy person, so I don't like things in my grill. I like the clean kind of OEM plus look. Even with the CSF heat exchanger or like the Velocitech intake scoops and stuff like that, that wasn't necessarily my first choice, but it's kind of fine. You know, when I'm focused on performance, I'm willing to try out upgraded mods. So yeah, stuff like in the grill area, it's not really my cup of tea. The only thing that I did see somebody that really produced some like real data was Body, when he said that upgrading to the front mount intake helped reduce his IATs. And that was a part of him pushing for higher horsepower or faster speeds on his M340, the stock turbo setup. So it seemed like it worked for him, but granted, he was pushing like over 30 PSI on the stock turbo. I can't imagine how inefficient that was. Like, yeah, it made a lot of torque, but at that point, it's almost just like a blow dryer, right? So that was probably a lot more important for him than it would be for most people. Most people just want it in front of the car because they like how it looks, they like how it sounds. It's probably not going to provide a significant benefit. But that's just my uneducated personal opinion as somebody that hasn't used one. I don't plan on getting one. And RK, the one that he got, RK has the silicone tubing, so it's like all silicone. I think that one's probably easier to install if you are looking for an option. Let's see, are all the ZF 8 speeds the same? They are not. So we talked about it earlier. HP 50 is like the rating of the transmission. So 50 references 50 or 500 Newton meters. The newer B58s, like the M340i and M440i, have HP 51s. So it's like a revised HP 50. But if you look at the M3 and M4, they have an HP 76 because those cars are rated for a lot more torque. So it's technically rated for 700 Newton meters or whatever. And it goes up even higher. Like Hellcats and stuff, those ZF cars are HP 90s. So they're rated for 900 Newton meters. So there are a lot of different versions of the ZF 8 speed, and they bolt up differently. They have different bolt patterns and stuff. If you've seen anybody do an HP 70 swap, you'll see that they have to switch to like, what is it? They have to modify their transmission mount, and like just some of the auxiliary things about it have to be changed. So it won't just bolt up to your car. You have to run a different flywheel and some other things too. So as far as like the internals being a ZF 8 speed, it is like similar geometry or a similar recipe, but all ZF 8 speeds are not the same. And that's why, like, if you're doing an HP 70 swap, you got to get the right HP 70, because other cars might come with an HP 70, but it'll be even harder to fit, or it just won't fit at all. Yeah, if you're in Cincinnati, Eurocharged is a good shop. I haven't done a lot of work there since I do most of my work myself, but I do go there for all my dyno tuning or my dyno testing. So they've been a good shop to me. They have supported a lot of my testing, and basically I hog their dynos some days, and they were good with it too. So I like recommending them to people in the area that don't want to do their own work. There's also MWorks down here. If you guys haven't heard of them, another enthusiast that owns a BMW shop. So he's in Cincinnati also. Gosh, man, I'm struggling. Let's see. Do I need to log my custom trans tune? So if you guys remember like my videos about XHP and even custom transmission tuning, it's less about how the tune operates and more about the features that you integrate into the tune. So the transmission itself, it just works. In my testing and my experience, right? It just kind of works. What you want to do is being able to enable the different features for shift speed, shift comfort, shift RPM, stuff like that. So you're not really going to log it, but you are going to drive it through its paces, basically how you drive your car. If you race it, take it racing. If you daily drive it around town, and see if there's anything that it does that you don't want it to do. If it's shifting too early or shifting too lazy, shifting too soft, and work with your custom tuner to get those things addressed. And they can get on the keys and adjust all of those settings to make it shift how you want, drive how you want, and things like that. So it's not like an engine log, like a DME tune log, where you're looking for timing and boost and leaks and all this stuff. It pretty much just works. But there are a lot of settings that they can adjust to change how, the driving experience is. That's basically what it does. So, yeah, I mean, I never ran any logs, and I've heard some of the things in XHP are kind of hit or miss as far as like trying to make a set decision on transmission life and if it needs to be rebuilt and stuff like that. But my recommendation is just drive it. Just drive it and put it through its paces to see if there's anything you don't like. Mikey's in the chat. Yeah, speaking of records. Yeah, and HP76, that's a good question. Can you put an HP76 in a Gen 1 B58? Not that I know of, but I'm sure somebody will make it work at some point. Everything that I've seen is on Gen 2s, because I saw an HP76 on a Supra and maybe an M340i. I can't remember now. So something between the B58 TU and the S58 seems to make it more compatible, or maybe it's the chassis itself. So yeah, I would just double check on that to see which way, how they got it to work, I guess, because it's going to need a custom tune too. So you need XHP to support it. And yeah, I keep seeing people post videos of it saying that it's set up, but I haven't seen any write-ups or anything on how it actually works. You see, you've seen HP76 on a 540. It's going to be different, man. And I mean, because 5 Series or G Series vehicles, it's a different platform than F Series. So that's the weird thing about 540i's, X3, M40i's, like all these cars, they never get tuning updates at the same time as everybody else because they have a weird combination of their chassis and their engine tuning with like the rest of the car. So I could see like a 5 Series being able to take advantage of upgrades that we can't, because a G30 is going to be a different platform than an F30. What's up, man? I need to see the new setup since we're posting all these times. I need to see what the little 240 that can do. Let me know when you go pure trans. Maybe I'll take yours. Yeah, I thought that would be pretty cool though if I did like an HP70 swap and made a video on it. But I know after dropping the transmission in my 440, it's just not fun. It's not impossible, but it's not fun on a garage floor. But we'll see. Yeah, let me know, man. I'll be in touch. Let's see. Bunch of questions. Sorry again, I'm way behind. Some of you guys probably been waiting for your questions forever. I apologize. Best coolant for Gen 1, stock coolant is what I use. I just use the BMW OEM coolant mixed with distilled water. Works great. If you want to, you can add water wetter, but I only put it in the intercooler circuit. Everything on the engine side for me has been fine. I've never had overheating issues or anything, even when tracking the car. So I don't really see a need to try to make that run cooler. I'd rather keep it at operating temperature so everything runs as efficiently as possible. But yeah, I just use OEM coolant and I add water wetter on the intercooler circuit. What time is it? Oh, we've been here on for a grip. All right. I might be running out of time soon. Let's see. So again, yeah, we got somebody asking about hybrid turbo and door stage 2. That's the cheat code, guys. Turbo downpipe. Voice crack. Turbo downpipe fuel pump. 600 wheel horsepower on E30 to E50. Works every time. So if you want a simple setup that just makes power, is reliable, you don't have to worry about it, go for it. If you want to overcomplicate things like me, get port injection, run full E85, realize your low pressure fuel pump can't meet your expectations, upgrade your low pressure fuel pump. Now you've got like all this extra stuff going. I mean, it's fun. I like running full E85, but I made the same power on just a Dodge Stage 2 with an ethanol mix. So it's kind of up to you to decide if it's worth it. Let's see. All right, you guys can help me out with this one. What plugs do you need to run? Everybody said stock plugs, stock gap. Stock plug, stock gap. Stock gap, stock plugs. Every time. If you guys didn't hear me earlier, I don't need to hear your setup. I don't need to know what turbo you're running. I don't need to know what fuel you're running. I don't need to know anything about your setup or anything about how your car is driving. If it's a B58, stock plugs, stock gap. Tell your friends. Stock gap is 0.28 or 0.028 to 0.031. So 28's within stock range. And gapping it won't cause issues in itself. Like having a lower gap isn't a problem, but you can damage it and have issues when you're doing the gapping. And so you just want to make sure that you don't do that without being really careful. That's the biggest downside. If you damage the tip and stuff like that. And technically it runs a little less efficiently and stuff. Running the biggest gap possible will give you the best experience. Yeah, I know a lot of people that gap their plugs. I gapped my plugs. I guess that was like 2020 or whatever. I had my full E85 tune, stock turbo setup, and I gapped them down to 0.020, I think. And it ran fine. But when I replaced my plugs, I didn't gap them, and I realized it also ran fine. And so I was realizing I was just wasting my time. So yeah, you're not going to blow it up from running gapped plugs, but you're not benefiting. Yeah, and it never hurts to check your gap because they do vary. That's the weird thing. I don't know. I've never quite understood that, but it seems like a pretty wide range for something that's manufactured by like a company that probably needs pretty high precision to make a spark plug in the first place. But regardless, they come at a range. Some of them can come from the factory too big or too small. So it doesn't hurt to check just to make sure it's within the stock specs. Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's see, on Gen 2, we can do 700 with a pure Dodge Stage 2 and S58 injector. That is true. And I think the biggest difference between Gen 1 and Gen 2 is that the injectors on Gen 2 are smaller flowing or lower flowing. So you have to upgrade injectors to get that high, but then it allows you to push the rest of the setup further. So it seems like on a Gen 1, you kind of hit the limits of an upgraded fuel pump and injectors at the same time, and you have to upgrade both. But on a Gen 2, you just run into the limit sooner. Let's see. Oh, now that one. So how often do we change plugs? That's a good question. I have replaced mine probably 4 times on my 440i, but I've replaced them only once on the 340i. And on the 440, it's because I just kept trying stuff. I'm annoying and I can't leave things alone. So, like I said, I took out my stock plugs, gapped them, replaced them, tried all different setups. And anytime I had an issue at one point, I was replacing my plugs to see if it fixed it, and it didn't. So, yeah, I replace my plugs a lot more than you probably need to, but usually it's around like 40,000 miles to 60,000 miles. If you're pushing higher horsepower, probably sooner. Gen 0 B58. See, they don't know about that, man. They don't know about that. Everybody in here is worried about the Gen 3. Nobody wants to talk about Gen 0. It's always TU2. It's never, how's that negative TU going? But that's all right. We'll keep them guessing. Yeah. And I mean, because from a spark plug change interval, like the reason should be because your spark plugs are worn. So usually that means the tip is worn down. It's not at a point anymore. The gap is too big and it can start causing problems. Everybody that I've seen replace spark plugs, it looks almost like new. At most, maybe it's covered in soot or like oil or something because they were having other issues. But I can't think of a time that I've seen somebody replace B58 spark plugs because they were actually worn and like it was time to replace them. So, and I mean, it doesn't hurt. You don't obviously want to run worn spark plugs and have misfires and stuff like that. So, replacing them sooner is better. But if it literally looks like new, like the ones that I pull out of my car that I've been replacing them over and over for no reason, like you're kind of wasting money. Shout out to FCP though, spoiling us with that unlimited warranty. What brake fluid do I use? I use Type 200. Gosh, I got everything literally like just out of arm's reach so I could put it on camera. But I posted a brake flush video and it shows the fluid that I use. I use it for daily driving and for track use. Yeah, so as far as I think somebody else asked that question too. I wonder if I can pull it up. Maybe not. I thought I saw it, but MHD flex fuel for Gen 2. People say soon because it's like a meme. People say 2 weeks, same thing. Um, Generally speaking, it'll come when it comes. It's kind of like the MG Flasher thing. Sometimes I'm not really sure what the delay is, but especially with MHD because they released it for Gen 1, it seems like they at least have the recipe. So there may be some other issues that they're running into, especially like with MHD, for example, they came out with a unique flex fuel analyzer installed to make it easier, but they found out like it doesn't work on manual transmission cars and stuff like that. So they kind of had to figure out those nuances. So it's just taking them a little more time to get it to work the way that they want it to. I'd rather them release a fully vetted project than come out with something that we have to do the R&D for them. So just give it time. But I'm not really sure when it's going to come out. They were saying that they thought it was soon over the summer. So I kind of anticipate they either ran into an issue or figured something out that caused it to be delayed, unfortunately. Yeah, Type 200, everybody dogs me for using it, but it's been perfect. I've used it in multiple cars. I've had no issues. Our cars have really good cooling from the factory. I mean, we actually have cooling ducts from the factory. Our cars come factory with Brembo brakes. I mean, the braking system just works really well. So I've never had any issues. I'm running mid to front pack, at the track days that I go to. I'm not the fastest car there, but I'm up there and it hasn't been a problem. Biggest thing for me is brake pads. Upgrade the brake pads to make sure that it can handle the heat, but I haven't had any issues with brake fluid. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of been like one of the defaults for years. So I feel like probably some other companies are passing them up now with higher quality solutions and stuff. Cause I don't think they've changed. Like I've been using Type 200 since 2014. So unless they're coming out with like a V2 or something, I can see how it's not really the quote unquote best or like highest heat capacity or whatever. But I haven't overwhelmed it personally. Is there any way to check ethanol content? Yeah, you can do it in the app, or you can do it on the cluster if you have, uh, what is it, MHD Plus or boot mode custom ROM. If you go to the cluster and go to the third window, then it should show what fuel, what ethanol content you're running. So are there any risks running 0W20 long-term on a tuned car? I'm going to share my opinion, and I'll be talking more about oil because I'm changing my oil weight again soon. But personal opinion, I ran 0W20 for years, didn't have any issues. If it's burning oil, some people switch to 30 weight or 40 weight oil to try to mitigate it. But I've never had any oil loss, oil leaks, oil burning, oil consumption, anything like that. So for me personally, I say 0W20 is fine. The OEM spec goes up to 5W30. So you can run that and it's still OEM spec and doesn't, it's not like something crazy to do because they validate it with their certification, but it's just kind of up to you. So I've talked about it before. I'm going to be switching to 0W30 for a couple of reasons, and I'll talk about that in a video. But I've ran 0W20, 5W30, 5W40. They all worked. So I don't see it being as risky. All right, let's do one last question. What else do we got? Let's pick a good one. Gosh, I got a lot in here. Sorry, guys. Most of you guys DM me anyway, so I'm sure I'll answer your questions at some point. But yeah, we're just running out of time today. Oh, this is a good question. All right. So, oh, wait, hold on. Let me read this. Yes. See, my man understands. A lot of the spark plug behavior is people feeling like they need to mimic the change intervals from older eras of turbo engines with weaker ignition systems and soft tip plugs at 36 thousandths. Absolutely. And it's the same thing with pretty much everything on our cars. The B58 is the best engine that I've ever owned because of all the updates that they've made. And every single update that they've made is considered a problem. The cooling system's overstressed, the oil is overstressed, the spark plugs aren't strong enough, and all these things that people are saying don't need to be upgraded need to be upgraded. But in reality, these things are on modern engines that have had 30, 40 plus years of engineering behind coming up with it, and it just works a lot better. So if you're coming from an Evo 8 or, an Eclipse or whatever, it's just not going to be the same, man. It's very, very different. And so, I'm learning to appreciate that. And that's why I try to do my own testing and share information with you guys so that we don't waste our money making these assumptions that older platforms had to live with. If anything, we should be super grateful that we don't have to deal with that stuff anymore, because we could be under our cars every morning, turning little screws, trying to get our fuel system dialed in for cold starts and all this stuff. Like, it's a modern engine. It should not have those problems. I still have people arguing with me that charge pipes are a problem. It's stuff like that. It's just old habits die hard, I guess. But yeah, our ignition system is, let me put it this way. Our ignition system is good enough quality that other platforms consider it an upgrade. So people are buying parts to swap our ignition system parts, our coil packs and stuff like that onto their cars. That should tell you everything. So yeah, just keep that in mind. All right. Yeah. So last question I wanted to answer. Sorry, you guys get me started real easy. So if you're maxed out, how much is a built trans going to help performance? And I think that's a really good question because a lot of people don't realize a transmission on the limit is going to be slower than a built transmission. Even if it's technically handling the power and not slipping, it's going to shift slower, which can provide a negative impact on your times. So a lot of people say things that they don't think make a difference because they're just upgrading it for strength. But in reality, if you're operating something at its limits, it's going to probably be slower and impact your times. So for a transmission, stuff like that, if your sixth gear is slipping and you're getting away with your stock transmission record or whatever because you're not shifting the sixth or you're dropping torque in sixth, you could probably be even faster if you built your trans. And that was the same, idea behind Body building his trans on his stock turbo setup because he knew that a transmission that can handle extra torque is going to shift faster and produce faster times than a stock transmission that's at its limit. So I highly recommend that if you guys are already at the limits of your transmission and you're considering trying to go faster and you don't want to throw more power at it or you're not really sure if it's going to make a difference, it will make the car faster. And there's a lot of time lost in shifting. Like that's what drag mode is. Drag mode just makes your car shift as fast as possible. So if you can get back that time from a weak transmission that's, barely hanging on, your car will be faster without making any more power. Hey, for sure, man. I don't do these a lot, so let me know because I got to schedule some time to make this happen. But I'm definitely down. I'm really hoping to make more connections in the community and have some real like technical discussions with the people that make the parts. Because people like you, like companies like you that really make high quality parts, it's important that good information gets out there. So yeah, I'd definitely be down for that. But on that note, I think I'm going to be stepping away. So I appreciate you guys, everybody, for joining in. Hopefully, I've answered all of your questions. I know a lot of people probably still have open questions, but you're probably already in my DMs just waiting for a response. So I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. But yeah, we're going to be signing off. Another video will be posted tomorrow. And then, we'll be back on the regular schedule. So thanks again for tuning in. Hope you guys are having a good break. If you're not off, I get it too. I had a job that didn't let me get off during this time either. But hopefully, you guys have a good holiday. See you in the next year. You too, man. Take it easy. I'll see you on the next one.